Once again, I've been asked to read the character counts oath, if you might, the rules, I guess, by which we're going to run the show. I don't always think it's very necessary, but we do it anyway to remind people that Urbandale is a national leader in character counts, endeavoring at all times to promote and model the principles of trustworthiness, respect, responsibility, fairness, caring, and citizenship. In conducting this morning's meeting, we expect all participants will act in a respectful manner consistent with these principles. We want everyone to have an opportunity to hear and speak. Obviously, there are multiple positions on different issues. We ask for everyone's respect to show respect to each other. Shouting over someone speaking will not be tolerated. We are all here to listen and speak our positions. We will do this. Hopefully, we'll do this in a civil manner. Those here to purposely be disruptive will be asked to leave. I don't think there are any of those here today, and I don't think there have been in the past, but sometimes people get emotional and a little carried away. If you are interested in asking a question, please place your name on a note card and place it in the two buckets here behind me, and we will draw from each of them. One is state, the other one is county, city, and school. Each person asking a question will be timed and limited to 2 minutes. We will ask you to respect the 2-minute limit so that we can get as many people as possible in the hour and a half that we have. Those extending past the 2 minutes will be asked to stop. As you are waiting your turn to ask a question, we encourage you to prepare your question to ask it in the time allotted. Thanks again to everyone for coming. We conduct these forums on the last Saturday of the month throughout the legislative session and have done so for more than 10 years. This has been the most active, engaged audience that we've seen in the history of our forums, but the Chamber appreciates you being here to connect with our officials, and thank you for your engagement. As always, forums such as these have sponsors. All members have the opportunity to sponsor the forums as a benefit of membership in the Chamber. John Smith really is a presenting sponsor for all the forums throughout the year, and I know John is here. John, would you like to speak to the group?
Appreciate everybody coming here. I work with my realty. We need some inventory right now. Our average price here in Urbandale is right up around the 300 range right now. I know everybody got their assessments last couple of weeks here. It's one of those things. The prices have been going up, so I'd be more happy to talk to you afterwards if you need any help. Thank
you, John. We appreciate what you do. In addition to John, we provide the option for members to sponsor individual sessions. Two sponsors for the March forum include CenturyLink and Urbandale Republicans. Is our representative here? I thought Brad was here.
I'm here.
Would you like to speak?
Thank you. Is he here? No. Okay. Yeah, I want to put in a plug for a couple different things. There might be people here that aren't members of the Chamber, and you can join, your business can join. You can go back to work and talk to your boss and see if your company is a member, or you can join as an individual. A lot of people are just don't work anymore or do different things where their company didn't want to join, so they joined as individuals. And Ryan is the new membership director, and he can get one of these packets to you. He's new, so I'm helping him out. And so here's this packet, tells all about the Chamber, and we're happy to host this because this particular event because it helps people learn what their legislators are up to, what's going on down at the Capitol, rather than have to hear it through the news, etc. And after these forums are over, the opportunity to complain to legislators might not be there so much anymore. And the Chamber is an organization that's organized for solutions and networking with other people so you can find solutions to your problem. Right now, one of our state's problems is the farmers aren't making as much money. So until that turns around, money's going to be tight for the schools or what have you. And there might be other solutions out there that you can come up with by networking at Chamber events. So here's a membership packet right here. It'll be in the back table if you have an interest in talking to Ryan some more. There you go.
Thank you, Brad. And Mike Sadler is usually here from CenturyLink. I don't think Mike was here, but thank you to them. And any member company or organization that wants to sponsor are welcome to do it. So let's get started. What we're going to do maybe a little different since the legislature went home last night. I think I was warned on the news this morning, but they didn't tell me, so I had to wait till I got to the Chamber. That's where you find all the information. But anyway, John was not here last month, so we're going to ask him to kick it off and give us about 2 minutes of what he saw happen last night, maybe a summary, and then ask the senator to do the same. John?
Well, as EJ noted, we pulled the marathon session yesterday. We got into the House at 8 a.m. yesterday morning, and we did sign and die at 7:14 this morning. So we're there just about 24 hours working on our last minute bills. And as I like to say, the sooner we get out of there, the less damage we do. And that was my philosophy, I guess, this year. Yesterday, we worked, the three main bills we worked on were water quality. We worked on the standings bill, which is a standing appropriations bill. And the bill that probably took the most time last night was the medical cannabis bill that we got through. And I think it passed the House chamber about 6:30 this morning, and I think it got over the Senate, and you guys passed it about 7. So we passed a pretty comprehensive medical cannabis bill. It wasn't as good a bill as the Senate sent over to us, but the House Republicans amended the bill, and we put together a piece. I think it was pretty bipartisan support in the House, and will hopefully bring relief to over 12,000 islands who would probably qualify for this program once it's implemented in about the next 12 to 18 months. Water quality was an item that we were trying to get through in the last minute. There was a bill but in both chambers, in the House and the Senate. The House, of course, we preferred our bill. The Senate preferred their bill. I know they worked back and forth, leadership, and really couldn't come to a consensus on a bill that we could both move out of the chamber, so we did not, unfortunately, do anything this year with water quality. And I can get into that a little bit later if we want to in the discussions, but that was pretty much what we did over the past 24 hours.
Yeah, not much more to add in regards to the last 24 hours. I'm a little delirious. I mean, I think we're both. But this is the budget. We went through it. Really, I really would rather talk about this last week, because pretty much this last week was all about the budget. The medical cannabis is something that you and I were getting together at 3 o'clock in the morning. We really pushed hard. Not happy about what the House did, but certainly it's a step. We could go into more details about what that bill did, which was great. I was really excited. We made some progress. You and I worked on this in regards to mental health. We plowed $18.9 million just for Polk County, plus we raised the caps throughout the state. So that was a good thing. Property tax, you talked about the assessor. We actually changed things a little bit, where if you're upset about your assessment, now you go in and you protest your assessment. It actually is requiring the assessor to defend themselves more. It really doesn't change the assessment process, and then it did extend the appeals board. So forever. So, but I'd rather just listen to all your questions. That really the medical cannabis thing, that is what held us up. Water quality is very disappointing. And what's really disappointing to me is we did the same water quality bill that you all voted for last year, and then they changed their mind. So very frustrated with the House right now, and I'm talking about the House Republicans. But with that said, it wasn't a pretty process. It wasn't the budget, obviously, you know, our budget was down. We spent about $100 million less than we did last year because of the revenue estimating conference, as mentioned by, I think, EJ or someone. Our commodity, or by Brad Bowstead, obviously our farming income is down. You know, we had to make some adjustments. We did have to plug a hole twice now in our budget because our revenues went down. In this last go around, we had to take money out of our reserve. But the good news is part of the budget we just did repays that money that was in the reserve. So we didn't go around. And when I say when we did 2 cuts, that's in the year we're in right now. So we got through next year's. We don't anticipate any problems there unless you know, something happens crazy in regards to farm income.
Thank you, Senator. We're going to do the first question. Let me put it. The second question will be Jess McCord. No, we're not going to. Very briefly, please.
We're the potted plant section.
Well, why should it change? Go ahead if you'd like to say so. Go ahead.
No, I'm good. Your direction, Don. I'm good. Why don't we get started on questions? I just had to give you a big.
I'll start with
Never miss enough.
Never miss an opportunity to speak. Robert Brownell, Polk County Board of Supervisors. I guess I'd just like to say, it's easy for local governments, I think, to show up after the session's over and say, geez, you guys really screwed us up. And then in some cases, that probably is true. But in this case, I think there was a lot of things done in the legislature this year that I think were really good, and some things I didn't agree with, but a lot of things I did agree with. And I did want to tip the hat, at least at this point, to both Brad and John for their work on medical cannabis. They were both very strong advocates and worked real hard on that and have been for years. And it's something that's real important to a lot of our constituents. We see the actual, on the front lines, mayors, council members, supervisors, see the actual effects, actual people that are, could be and will be affected by this, and it's pretty impressive. So my hat's off to them, and they did a good job there. We're still kind of analyzing a lot of this stuff that came along from the legislature. They mentioned the assessor's bill. We're kind of analyzing that. I think that probably has more effect on rural counties than it does on Polk County. We can talk about that if you want to. But the mental health piece, we can talk about that. That's something that's one of my areas of interest, so I tend to be somewhat fluent on that. And but we've got a list of things that I'm sure you want to talk about with the representative and the senator, and we may opine on that ourselves as time goes on, and because a lot of the stuff that they do has an effect on what we do, so we may have some perspective on that too. Anyway, that's all I have.
I'll just, you want to go again? I'll just comment briefly again. I want to appreciate Brad and John for representing us this session and for listening. As I said, as Bob said, I don't agree necessarily with 100% of all the issues all the time, but one thing about Brad and John both is that they listen to us. They respect our opinions from cities. They advocate for our positions. One thing that didn't happen this session is the waterworks bill, and that's in large part to thanks both to Brad and John for that, for not having that. And we'll work toward regional water in a different way, but in the right way, and not in the way that the House had proposed a bill initially. So thank you to both of them for that. One thing that we will be dealing with as a city is the fireworks, and we do have on Tuesday night's agenda an item to have an ordinance. I don't think the governor's even signed it yet, has he?
No, he hasn't.
So I don't know if we're gonna be able to do that Tuesday. We're assuming it's gonna be signed by Tuesday, but if it isn't, maybe we need to take that off. But I do think as a city, we will be looking to opt out, and John and Brad are on different sides of that issue. I don't agree with the fireworks either, but at least Brad made sure that if it was going to go through, that the cities do have the chance to opt out from the use of that. So I appreciate that as well. So if it does get signed by the governor, I anticipate that we will at least be having an ordinance to opt out in the very near future on our agenda. So with that,
Thank you, Brad.
Let's go to questions.
Okay. Second question would be Jess McCord. First question would be Jane Robinette. So just go ahead and
Okay.
speak from there.
This is for Senator Zahn. This is not my story, but I'm going to get emotional, so I'll just preface it with that. I want you to imagine that you are pregnant. Imagine you are happy to be pregnant. You planned this pregnancy, you want this child. Then imagine an ultrasound at 21 weeks shows that something has gone horribly wrong. The doctor tells you the baby will suffer an agonizing, suffocating death upon birth. Imagine that amid the devastation, you decide the most compassionate thing is to end your pregnancy. Now imagine that the doctor tells you that because your pregnancy is over 20 weeks, Iowa law prohibits an abortion to avert the suffering because your life or a major bodily function is not endangered to qualify as a medical emergency, and it wouldn't prevent the loss, or it wouldn't preserve the life of the unborn fetus. So imagine that you must endure for many more weeks, knowing that at birth the baby will suffer and die. Imagine enduring questions about the pregnancy and having to explain the situation again and again. Imagine living through that grief repeatedly. And then imagine the birth, the trauma of the struggle and the death. Now, I believe once born, the parents could decide in consultation with doctors in the hospital, perhaps, to withhold life-sustaining procedures if the baby has a terminal condition and didn't die immediately, but not for a 21-week-old fetus in utero. This is just one example of the law that you voted for in Senate File 471. So my question is, help me understand how this is compassionate. Help me understand how this is pro-life.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, we've had a lot of conversations back and forth, Jane.
Yes, we have.
And appreciate you coming down to the Capitol. And I made it really clear that I am a pro-life candidate. When I was running this last fall, I've always been very consistent on that. I've got a flyer here that my opponent put out, said that I'm pro-life and I would ban abortions, and I followed through on that commitment.
Details matter.
Yeah.
Details matter.
There could have been exceptions to that law.
Yeah.
For that type of condition, for rape and for incest. But they were voted down by your party.
Okay. Anyone else would like to address the question? Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Jess, and the next question will be asked by Kay Marshall.
Okay, this is for you guys. So say I started a fist fight with someone, I began to lose that fight, and I started feeling threatened, and I pulled out my gun and shot the other person for that reason. Could I use the stand your ground defense?
That would depend on the situation.
Mhm.
I'll let people know here, the first bill that came through the House, I voted no on the stand your ground bill. And the bill was then sent over to the Senate, and there were amendments put on the Senate bill. When it came back over to the House, I did vote yes on the second bill that came back. The reason I voted yes were the changes was in the bills, they took out that you could have guns on campuses. It restored background checks on private sales. It also worked with, I had a big problem with children handling guns, but the bill tightened that up and made sure that the parent that had the child using a firearm was within an arm's length or close proximity. And it also redid the language on how guns and lifetime permits would be handled. So those changes, I ended up changing my mind and did vote for the gun bill on the Senate version.
Right, but specifically on stand your ground, would that situation I just described be, could you see that happening?
If you felt like your life was being threatened, you could use that defense on stand your ground.
Even if I was the aggressor in the situation?
Well, see, you'd have to have almost witnesses there to see what happened to really tell.
What if there aren't any witnesses?
Then it's the court of law that would make that determination.
And here's what I would like to add, is you have to be where you are threat of death. And ultimately, it is going to be up to the investigating county prosecutor if there needs to be. This is not a license to kill. I mentioned that in our last forum. What this does is it'll allow you, if you're being attacked, you are being attacked, you do not have to retreat if you think you potentially could be, you could be killed. And you could defend yourself, and that's what that bill said. But ultimately, it'll go through the process of the prosecutor and the county attorney to decide, and the investigators, your local officials, if that you had a reason to defend yourself based on if you're being threatened of possibly death.
Okay. Well, I hope it hasn't escaped either of you guys. What I just described is exactly what happened to Trayvon Martin in Florida.
That's right. No witnesses. Zimmerman's too much muddy water.
Yeah.
With respect to the gun law that was passed, and Bob may want to opine on this too, we're trying to analyze what all this means, because one of the things that within the bill specifically calls out counties and cities for no-gun zones and the ability to carry a legitimate concealed carry permit on the holder, of course, be able to carry those into public spaces. We're trying to analyze what that means exactly, and four of the best law firms in town, not the county attorney, have looked into this over the past week, Bob's being one, by way of disclosure, with respect to the courthouse, which is a very volatile area, and the Wells Fargo Arena, Prairie Meadows, and public spaces in general are those public spaces, and so on. And we've got some good opinions on these things, I think, but these are the kind of things that kind of are sort of, you know, tributaries of the bigger bill that have an effect. And you know, our concern in Polk County, obviously, is that in a very volatile area like courtrooms, where we're taking people's kids away from them, we're granting custody to somebody, we're allocating property, we're issuing long-term prison sentences, and so on, tensions run high. And so are we saying that it's okay to carry a gun into a courtroom? We don't think that it is. We don't think the law says that, and in fact, we're banking on that it doesn't, because we're going to continue to enforce that. That said, within the 5th District court system here, Polk County really isn't the problem. The problem is in some of the other counties that are completely unprotected. The courthouses have no security whatsoever. So how does that work exactly? So we're trying to analyze that. We met with the chief judge yesterday, and got his opinion on it. But this is the kind of stuff we're trying to analyze and try to figure out, well, what does this mean? And how do we protect the safety of witnesses, attorneys, defense and prosecutors both, judges obviously, and just people that are in the courtroom themselves. So, but we're trying to figure that out. We think we're on solid ground, but it's one of those things that could be subject to interpretation. But that's the kind of stuff that comes down through laws like this, where we have to deal with it, and not just us at the Board of Supervisors, but counties and cities too.
Sounds expensive.
It is.
And the intention of the bill that we passed was to not allow what you would say a city or a county to have a gun-free county, like what's done in Chicago right now. That's what the intention was. We got an opinion from the Attorney General in regards to county courthouses, and in Polk County is a little different. Rural county courthouses, you renew your license, your driver's license, they do a lot of different things there. But in Polk County, you can establish your own rules like they do in Polk County, and nothing's going to change from that.
That's how we're interpreting it in Polk County. But you get into some of these courthouses like Dallas County, for example. You have courtrooms on the 1st floor, you got county offices on the 2nd floor, you got more courtrooms on the 3rd floor. And how do you enforce that stuff? So, I mean, I don't get paid by Dallas County, so I guess it's not my problem. But you know, but I think it's a problem for the judge and how that's going to be enforced. So, you know, it's one of those questions that we all have.
Certainly, from a city standpoint, we're looking at it too. How do we protect in our city facilities, especially city council chambers? It's not without precedent. That's happened in Iowa before. Right? We go back to Mount Pleasant and what happened there. So it's a big concern for us. We already have a uniform presence. We have some other security features in place, but frankly, I would feel better if we did have at least a gun-free area at our city council and perhaps some other areas on our civic campus. We're looking at that as well.
I'm happy that the schools are exempt from the bill.
Okay, and the next question would be Gary, and I left. I'm having a hard time reading the last name. Is it okay?
Good morning. Again, I appreciate the opportunity to be here in the chamber doing this. As a still relatively new resident of Urbandale, I always learn something here. And I kind of changed my question. It was in the county city school area. So we'll start with, I'd like to hear from Supervisor Brownell, but the two legislators may want to chime in. My son, and I told some of you this, he started receiving some services this past week after being notified last November that he could get the waiver. It took that length of time to get him through the process, and then since January till now to get staff. So the workforce issue is still very much an issue. And speaking with Supervisor Brownell, it's a matter of the reimbursement rates that provider agencies get to hire quality staff and maintain that staff. So it really doesn't matter if you have a waiver, if you don't have staff, to deliver the services, it's meaningless. And part of this, you know, also I want to know about what's happening with the MCO, the managed care of Medicaid. From what I read, they're still not saving any money. And in fact, we're cutting DHS's budget. And so how much longer is that going to go on before the state, I know there's a push now to get the new head of CMS to rescind that waiver. I don't expect her to do that. She helped write it. And so I just wonder when the state is going to have enough, because they're still asking for more money, but they're denying services, the NCOs are. They're delaying on paying bills to providers. So anyway, comments and some hope of what will change in the future.
And the hope guy, you know. There's you know, they passed a mental health bill in the legislature. The bill that we liked the best was in the Senate, and after Brad Zahn and Charles Schneider, Randy Feenstra is my favorite senator, of course, and Randy wrote a bill that was really pretty good, and it would have helped us and done a lot of good, I think, statewide. It was not the bill that was adopted. It was a different bill. The House bill that was one that was adopted. It still does okay by us, okay, and that's, you know, I have to look at it that way. It's only a 3-year fix, and which is not very long, and Randy's bill was a 5-year fix, and it was more of a permanent fix too, I might add. But this is a 3-year fix, and it does dig into Broadlawns, their levy somewhat. I think they'll be okay, and you know, last session, you know, last forum we had, we talked about Broadlawns and the ACA and all that, and I think the ACA has helped Broadlawns. I mean, we have people that believe that Broadlawns is kind of double dipping. You know, they've got the ACA and they've got property tax levy. They're getting both. The thing to remember about Medicaid, that portion of the ACA that's Medicaid, is that it reimburses below cost. Okay, he's already said, so it's not a great deal. I've had a lot of hospitals think, wow, this would be great, we'll get reimbursed for Medicaid now, and then once they get the experience it, they find out it's not such a great deal. So there's that part of it, and the other part of it is, as you mentioned, is, okay, I'm getting reimbursed for Medicaid, but I have to actually get paid. And the pay between invoicing and actual payment can be up to 6 months through the MCO. So if you're not Broadlawn, you're just a provider, that could be tough. I mean, how do you survive on just cash flow when it takes 6 months, 5 months to get paid? And a lot of payments that do come into Broadlawns are short paid on top of that. So it's not such a hot deal, and so to dig into Broadlawn's levy to help Polk County out in mental health works for us, and it probably works okay for Broadlawns for 3 years, but as a long-term solution, not great. We'd like to see something like Senator Feenstra's bill in the long run, but I think we'll be okay on this thing. I think the other thing to remember, and of course here again, I'm not getting paid by the state of Iowa, but the entire state is going to have issues, because we've got huge fund balances in some of these rural counties and regions that they're now required to spend them down before they can spend any more money, before they get any more money from the legislature. So at some point, we're all going to be in the same boat, and we'll have to do something different than we're doing now. But I think what the legislature did, as far as we're concerned this year, was good. I mean, we'll be fine. Our allocation will set us where we need to be, and we'll be fine. But you know, 3 years is better than 1 year, obviously, but it's not as good as 5, and we thought that'd be good. You bring up some good points on you know, workforce development and how do you keep paying? How do you have these providers and they have employees that get no raises every year? I mean, that's not a recipe for keeping your employees very long, and so that's a concern of ours, because we've got a lot of good providers out there that haven't been able to give raises to their employees for a long time, and but they've got a heart for it and they keep doing it. So we try to work with them and work through a lot of things. We've got a lot of resources here in Polk County. If you're in one of the more rural counties where you're losing population, it's tougher, you know, a lot tougher, and so we have to think about access for all islands.
And I would just add that when we were preparing to move here, we were well told by folks at DHS, get in Polk County. Don't get in Dallas County. Don't get, you know, in any of the surroundings, Polk County, because of what you have just confirmed. So we did.
All right. Well, getting back to the Medicaid program in the state of Iowa, as you probably heard, you know, I never was in favor of switching from a privately run, state-run program to a managed care program. And as I said before, you know, the Iowa Medicaid Enterprise managed our budget on about $300 million a year to run the program here in the state of Iowa. And we're now paying close to $500 million a year to the MCOs. So we're actually paying more money, I think, for less services. And that was the governor's idea, and I know there are a lot of Republicans that are not very happy with this decision. In the House, we put amendments on the Human Services budget just this week to ask for a study of our program here in the state of Iowa and see where we're going wrong. That amendment was turned down because of the, you know, I'm in the minority party and the Republicans control both chambers. But I think we know here in the state of Iowa we've got a problem with delivery of services to our Medicaid patients. Right now we're going to underfund our Medicaid budget for next fiscal year, which starts July 1st, $70 million. So that's going to have a major impact on residents across our whole state that are on our state Medicaid program. We have providers that are not being paid. We have providers that are going out of business, especially in the rural areas of the state of Iowa. They've maxed out their lines of credit. They can't get any more borrowing money from their banks, and so they are going out of business. And it's usually in the smaller towns where it's now a problem with providing services to these areas that are in the rural parts of our state. So we have to revisit this, and I know Brad, we've talked about it. We need to make sure that we have a strong Medicaid system in the state of Iowa. And unfortunately, we really didn't do much this year to shore it up. And I'm afraid when we come back again next January, we're going to be facing the same problems and probably even more severe problems in the future.
I agree with everything he just said. There was an amendment that I supported in the Senate that didn't pass in regards to a study. I figured that I voted many times to shut this down. Unfortunately, I don't have enough voice with my fellow Republicans. That's just what it is. There is some good news, and I don't even know if yet, but I did get some language put in to the Health and Human Services budget, because the service providers, when I talk to them, and it is terrible what's going on. Right now, we got Child Serve that's just about ready to close up. We've rescued, you were involved with that, or no, you weren't involved, Jake was. Candeo up in Johnston, we ended up getting some cash, just some cash given to them from the worst, some of these MCOs are bad.
It was hundreds of thousands of dollars too.
Yeah, $300,000 just so they keep the door open. And it was just cash, here it is. Because I threatened, and Jake and I threatened to go to the corporate headquarters and just raise hell. But with that said, I did have some language put in because I've talked to a lot of these service providers. One of the things is their payments are getting better, but the process for the payments is the disaster. There's nothing that is there any service providers in here? Okay. There's no, the process to submit your claims, every one of these MCOs has a different process. One faxes, another one you gotta I don't know, scan an email, and, which is really, and then all the forms are all different for all these MCOs. So we did put language in there to make them all come together and at least have one form. I spend 5 or 10% of my week every week on the MCOs. That could be a service provider, or that could be what you have, Kate, a situation like that, where I'm trying to get people hooked up. And unfortunately, if you have cases out there, you need to get a hold of John and I, and then what we do is we put the heat on. And then things seem to start happening. But we need to do something about it. It is a disaster. Unfortunately, I don't have enough people that'll help me. I've talked about mental health before. I've sat down with Governor Branstad. I've said, do you even know what a caseworker is? Have you had any experience with mental health? And I made it no secret that I have had experience because of a family member. And so it gives you a complete different perspective on things. So it's something that we'll continue to fight for. And I'm hopeful that Kim Reynolds is going to be more receptive of doing some things. And I'm quite honestly, and I'm saying to be disrespectful, but I'm glad he's going to China. So.
I'm sorry, that gets agreed.
But anyway, it's been frustrating with him on this MCO takeover.
I might throw out, I have talked to Kim Reynolds about this, and I know Brad and John have too, and she seems to me, I mean, from my discussions with her, to be much more engaged in this issue than the current governor's office is. And so, so I'm hoping for good things there when it comes to MCOs, and we'll hopefully see a change there. But think about this for a second. I mean, I didn't hear about the Candeo thing, but Candeo is a big provider for us. I mean, they do a good job. Link Associates is a huge provider for us. They do vocational opportunities for disabled kids. And, yeah, it was Link.
It's
Okay.
Link.
But
I
Link is-
misspoke.
but-
It's Link. I don't want to
Yeah.
get in bad rumors going on.
Child Serve.
Child Serve, I think was a good
They're
change.
doing better.
Yeah, they do great work. But Link is a huge provider for us, and if they were to go under, that would really be devastating, let me tell you. So, you know, yeah, this is really a crisis.
Gary, you're up, and then after Gary will be Ann Hoffmaster.
I just want to say that there are some successes in the mental care situations. I had the opportunity to work with a young man by the name of Joel Reinberg last year. He worked with us at our camp, and unfortunately last week Joel died. He had a grand seizure mole, but his experience within the health community and the mental care community, he had nothing good to say about it. He was not able to get a job. Through training and everything, he was able to get a job at the Veterans Administration at the VA hospital. So there are some successes in that program. I just want to make you, when you guys do these things at work, I want to commend you for it. I want to commend our legislators for keeping our budget in line this year. They had to make some tough choices, but I appreciate what you did, because we don't want to be like the federal government where we owe $20 trillion, or obviously we would never owe that amount of money, but to keep those in lines and to try to divvy up that piece of pie, I think our legislators should be commended. I also would like to support Brad Zahn on his choice to support life. And I think that is absolutely, you know what, I know that there's people that disagree with that, but you know what, when our government decides that they're going to play God, then we cross the line. And so I guess my question to both of you is, especially Representative John Forbes, is why do we have so much contention on trying to protect life? Why do we not do more to protect life? That is the essence of our society. That is the essence of our Constitution. And so I want to commend Senator Brad Zahn on his efforts there. I think we have more work to do. And why do we contend? Why do we have a contention against life?
Well, I am a pro-life person, but I also believe that a woman has a choice to make on her own body.
Thank you.
The bill that was passed, the 20-week abortion ban, we tried to put amendments on it that would, you know, take into consideration incest, rape, and the life of the mother, and they were not taken by.
Can I ask you a question, a follow-up question on that? Is that the baby's fault?
Yeah.
Those situations are very uncomfortable, they're very hard to deal with, but there is such a minuscule amount of it. So why is it the baby's fault is my question.
Why are you pro-rapist?
Well, let's take a breath for a minute, if you would, please. What I prefer to do is let these folks answer the question rather than being interrupted.
Okay.
So, otherwise we get a little carried away.
And I know it's a very emotional issue for both sides of it, you know, and it's difficult. But in my mind, I think the woman has the right to make that choice. That's her body, and she needs to make that choice along with her family and her physician. And I know that a lot of people won't agree with that, but that's my personal feeling on that. But the bill was passed. We have to now, the state, we had to come up with an additional $3.3 million because we gave up $3 million in federal funding for our family planning centers here in the state of Iowa. And in a tight budget year, that was very difficult. We had to underfund programs like education, Medicaid, and things like that to make up this $3 million shortfall. It's also going to make it more difficult for women to get services for family planning. It's going to make it more difficult for women to access free birth control pills that will help reduce unwanted pregnancies here in our state. So in the end, it's probably gonna increase abortions here in the state of Iowa. And so, that's why, in the end, I think it's the woman's choice of what she does with her body.
Thank you.
Any other comments on that? Next question, Ann Hoffmaster, and then after that, Rick Smith. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question about some of the discussion so far about all the cuts that have had to be made in funding because of the shortfall of the state income. So I'm wondering, from reading articles in the Des Moines Register and listening to other sources of information, what's going to be done about getting rid of some of the tax incentives and special interest payments that are being made to get big corporations here, and corporations that actually don't need the money because they seem to be pretty self-sufficient on their own.
Well, there was a bill in the House that would look at the tax credit system here in the state of Iowa. We give away about $500 million a year in tax credits and tax refunds and things like that. And the majority of that, or a big chunk of that, is tied to commercial property tax. Probably about half of it when you look at the numbers. But we give away a lot of tax credits for different programs, and some of those programs work and some don't. So we're looking at a bill that didn't get through this year's legislature that will put a 5-year sunset, or we're going to look at tax credits every 5 years. And if we're not getting our best return on those tax credits, we're going to look at either reducing or eliminating those types of tax credits, because it's put our state in a crisis. And what happened is we had to go out and defund from our budget this fiscal year, which ends June 30th, as Brad said, $250 million. And that meant a huge reduction in a lot of budgets here and across the state. So we're going to continue to look at the tax credit programs here in the state of Iowa and make sure that when we do issue tax credits, that we are getting a return on investment where we see an increase in jobs, and we're not shipping these tax credits to out-of-state corporations.
This is something that we need to do. I agree with you. I've talked about this in forums before. Unfortunately, we didn't get anything done. But you got to be careful, because there's some tax credits in there for solar energy and ethanol and biofuels. There's some that, I think we just need to look at all of them. I also have the opportunity in the honor to represent Johnston as well. If you know that Pioneer was thinking about relocating, we did throw them a lot of money to keep them there. I understand they're a big corporation, but those are some very high-paying jobs up there. And I didn't want Johnston. I don't think probably anybody in here wanted Pioneer to move out. But I was glad that they talked about it in the House. At least they started the conversation. I can tell you we're going to have a conversation, because we cannot afford it anymore. And you look at what's going on with some of these tax credits are out of control. And you can just look at Altoona with Facebook. You can look West Des Moines. I'm not picking on these communities. They're great communities. With the Microsoft and all that stuff off of the bypass highway. And then, of course, the fertilizer plant was just disastrous. And what happens is we, as a legislature, don't have the opportunity to weigh in on those. I shouldn't say that. We appropriate, but we can't pick what companies or what like, for instance, the fertilizer plant or Facebook. And then we really need to have a conversation about Facebook getting a 20-year tax abatement, 100% tax abatement. So that really shortchanges the people, taxpayers of Altoona, and you brought in 30, 40, or 50 jobs. That's about it. This is something I'm very passionate about. The small businesses up and down the street here, they really don't qualify for anything like that. And I actually have I had a bill that I filed to say, hey, let's just get rid of all the tax credits. And then we come in and let's just equalize it. Of course, we have to lower the amount of money that we're doling out. And then the cities, the counties don't really like to hear that, because they want the tools to be able to bring in these businesses. But we are going to have a conversation next year. I can guarantee you that.
Well, I don't know that we don't like to hear it. We understand that tax giveaways are not great. And, you know, Brad mentioned the Facebook issue and Altoona. That's really very egregious and is not seen throughout this metro by anyone. I mean, normally the way these things work is a 10-year abatement. It starts off 100% year 1, 90% year 2, and 80% year 3, and so on. So it's a 10-year abatement. By the end of 10 years, you're paying your full boat. And my understanding was that's how Microsoft was, but I could be mistaken about that. But West Des Moines is not known for these blanket tax abatement deals. But you know, I could be mistaken about that. But that's normally how those things work. It's a competitive environment. It's a matter of, hey, you're going to get a business like Kemen to stay here and expand here, or do they go somewhere else, which they easily could. Nobody wants that, as Brad said. You know, we want to be able to keep our great businesses here. So, you know, we kind of get in the position of having to do some things that aren't great, but I think virtually all the communities here, for everything, the communities here have a fair play agreement, so they're not stealing, you know, business from each other. That works pretty well. Not 100% perfect, but works pretty well. And then we also, I think the cities elect people that treat this thing pretty seriously. So, you know, we have to compete with other cities, other states, especially other states, sometimes globally, and so we're in a position of having to do some things. And, you know, as Brad says, we need to have our tools taken away from us to do that. But I think you got to elect people that are going to not go nuts and, you know, give away 20, 30-year tax abatements that are 100%, take everything away from all the taxpayers.
From a city standpoint, certainly we don't have anything that where we provide that level of incentive. We certainly are strategic in our incentives, as Bob said. First of all, in the area, again, the fair play agreement is essentially, it just says essentially thou shalt not steal. So we don't try to poach from other cities. Certainly it does not create any benefit to the greater metropolitan area if we're poaching from one city to another. So there's a self-imposed safety valve there that the cities respect and use. The 20-year one that mentioned is the state law. It's the high quality jobs tax credit, which could easily be amended to get rid of that. Certainly it's up to the local jurisdiction to decide if they want to use that. I would say if I would never make a decision using 20-year 100% tax credit. I think this is crazy to do that. But that said, we do have some incentives in the Northwest Marketplace area to try to incent reasonably some people to come in. And the way I look at it is we try to take a more holistic approach and provide an overall environment for our businesses that we look to the long term. We try to keep a very low tax rate. We have one of the lowest tax levy rates in the entire metropolitan area and the entire state of Iowa. And I look at it that way, is that let's create an environment that we're not trying to incent for the short term, but let's make an environment for the long term that's best for our residents and best for our businesses that they want to be here.
Can I ask a follow-up? What kind of transparency is there in terms of the incentives that are given to the businesses or the tax abatements that are given to the businesses? And how do we know those aren't tied to someone's political contributions to a governor's office or another, you know, there's a political reason behind it? And, you know, how do we know about the dollars and where they're going?
I can address it from a city standpoint. The incentives that we have in place are all by right. We don't have any incentives that we've granted special to any person. The Northwest Marketplace, the ones I'm talking about, is the tax abatement area that is, that's all as a matter of right. It doesn't matter who it is. If they own the property and they build and they meet the qualifications that are set forth in there, they qualify for it. So we don't have anything that we grant as a special agreement or a special set forth that's not available to anybody else.
What about, like you were talking about the fertilizer plant and some,
That-
and Pioneer and the, where's the transparency?
Regards to the political contributions and back and forth, I don't know the answer to that. I'm sure there's a website out there that you could probably put 2 and 2 together, but I don't know. I will have to tell you that everything they give away, whether it be low interest loans, should all be public. And we could get you whatever if you want to know, you pick a certain company that you want to know, like Pioneer, what they got. I could get that information for you. That is all public.
So is that through a state agency?
That is through, yeah, through the Iowa Department of Economic Development Authority. It's a separate board that makes the decisions. And they have their own website, and I'm guessing that that website has that information on it. In regards to contributions to Branstead or whatever, I don't,
That's all public record.
I assume, but yeah, but I don't know that, I think she's asking if something connects it, so.
Oh.
I don't know, so.
Thank you.
Rick Smith is next, and Rick will be followed by Carmen Mayer.
Thank you. Thanks to the chamber, and thanks for you two guys. After 24 hours, you look pretty good. So. Really,
We're hanging in there.
really, you didn't stumble at all when you came in, so really appreciate it. So I have a question I think that actually might apply to everybody on the board here. My concern, and it really should be a nonpartisan issue, and that is the attack on science. We have an attack on science across the nation at all levels, and we saw in the legislature this year. It's an attack on science and science-based research. It's become so important today that there's a national science rally all across the country today. There's one at the Capitol beginning at noon today. The scientific community is so concerned with fake news and the fact that how do we determine what's true and what isn't? And the scientific community is really quite concerned about it because they want the facts rather than the fake news out there. Following this Saturday, next Saturday, there'll be a climate march. Again, climate scientists from around the country. Here in Iowa, we have I think there was 175 scientists from 39 universities and colleges this year that signed a statement about the facts of climate change. This is the 5th year in a row they published that. The reason they felt it necessary to publish that is because people don't believe that global warming is real. So the scientists have got on board with this. Now here's my concern. Two things in the legislature. First of all, House File 480 was introduced. I don't think it went anywhere. But it proposed that the Education Department teach opposition to evolution and climate science and cloning. They wanted you to teach pseudoscience. When legislators are introducing legislation to tell the educators to teach pseudoscience, I think we have a problem. Secondly, and I think this is really indicative of where this legislature went, we eliminated the Leopold Center. Leopold Center has been there for 30 years. It's been the leader in preventing dirty water coming to Urbandale. It's worked extremely hard in filter strips, bioreactors, all those kinds of things. We didn't just cut their budget, we eliminated them. The Iowa Flood Center, which is another important entity that's been there for some time, cut their funds as well. My concern is, don't we need to defend science? Don't everybody in this room, doesn't everybody feel we need to defend facts?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Rick. Just taking off on that, when you look at the environment, like I said, we tried to get a water quality bill through. We couldn't get it through this year. But we did, again, this year underfund REAP. We had in the budget originally $16 million. It was cut to $12 million, and then they scooped another $288,000 out of that for the parks. So we're way underfunding REAP this year again, which is going to have a negative impact on our state down the road. Water quality is about a $4 to $5 billion issue to fix here in the state of Iowa. You don't fix it overnight. It's about a 20-year fix. And this year, we're only going to probably maybe spend 20 to 30 million max with all the different funds we're going to use to work on reducing runoffs in our rivers, lakes, and streams. So we need to address this problem. Every year we kick the can down the road, the bigger the problem's going to be. And so we need to continue to look at funding sources for that.
The first, in regards to the House file, I was not familiar with 480, I think you said it was.
6 Republicans.
Yeah, I would not support that. The other thing in regards to the Leopold Center, we were told, and I'm not in agriculture, that the Nutrient Research Center would replace the same, and did a lot of duplication in regards to some of the same services that were provided by the Leopold Center. And I actually talked to a farmer and I said, hey, do you ever take advantage of the Leopold Center? He said, no, we go to the Nutrient Reduction Center for a research center that they do, that they're getting their new, and like I said, I'm not a special person. I don't know a lot about agriculture, but the buffers and that kind of stuff. that's what we did. We had to make some tough choices, and that's why we shut down the Leopold Center.
Did you hear any of the hearings? Did you hear the hearings on the Leopold Center?
I did not. Those were house
They were
hearings.
farmers testifying that nutrient, they have a totally different mission.
Yeah.
Totally different mission.
The other thing that we were able to restore some of the funding was the Iowa Flood Center.
Right.
That was a $1.5 million appropriation that was taken out, I believe, in the Senate. And we did get it restored back to $1.2 million, which would have been a tremendous deficit to our state, because they monitor streams and they look at levels, and you know, we've had about, I think, in the last 10 years, we've had about 1 or 2 500-year floods. And so they do a tremendous service to our state by monitoring our streams.
And I want to add another thing is the water quality bill. That is a huge disappointment to me that we didn't get something done. And I don't know what happened at the House. There was a lot of stuff going on last night. Because we had an agreement from what I was told when we were in caucus. But with that said, I did vote for that. It was putting $100 million in, which is better than what we're doing right now. So that's unfortunate that happened.
Yeah, that we were working that all night. In fact, we were working that till about 6 o'clock this morning, but it wasn't going to go. So
I was doing cannabis. So.
Do they serve you breakfast?
No.
Anyone else?
Although that McDonald's by the Capitol is open 24/7.
How do you know that, Brent?
I didn't go, but I saw a lot of my colleagues.
Anyone else before we move on?
Science, STEM, I mean, science is a big part of STEM. It's, you know, it's the critical element of it. So everything we do as a school board, we try and do evidence-based decision making. So it would be hypocritical of us to say, let's do pseudoscience. Personally, I'm a big believer in separation of church and state. I don't mind teaching religion, but let's teach all religions. So that's not really what's being asked.
No.
Carmen?
Yep.
And the next question would be Colin Scares? Skeins. I can't read it. Is that you? Sorry.
He's a doctor.
I
so-
couldn't read it. Go ahead.
All right.
Pretty neat.
Iowa minorities are now terrified because of the Stand Your Ground bill being passed. In Florida, several dozen black children have been killed in murders in which Stand Your Ground was used as a defense. 18-year-old Christopher Coate was killed by his neighbor when he came to the man's door unarmed to resolve a dispute. His murderer was acquitted. 9-year-old Shardavia Jenkins was killed in a crossfire in which one of the defendants tried to use Stand Your Ground as a defense. In every state in which such a law has been implemented, the murder rate has gone up while the national average has gone down. As someone who is pro-life, can you explain to the people of color why life matters before they're born, but not after?
Good question.
It certainly matters to me after they're born. And in regards to the Stand Your Ground, I've told you this is not a license to kill. It'll still have, I saw some data. I didn't bring all the data because I think the last forum someone actually gave me something and I did read through everything. And it is not, the Florida studies that I saw that was done did not show an increase in regards to murders because of using Stand Your Ground as a defense.
Okay, then I just have a follow-up.
Okay.
As a person of color, being looked at suspiciously just because I'm brown, if, let's say I need to go to the gas station at 1 a.m., I'm on a road trip, maybe coming back, and I go in to get something from the station, and somebody sees, well, she's brown, obviously as a female, I'm not seen as much of an aggressor as a male, but what if there was a dispute and there weren't any witnesses and I was killed? In that case, right, the person who shot me would say, well, she was the aggressor. And okay, gas stations have security cameras, but let's say there wasn't one. If somebody gets up there and says, well, this Mexican woman was being aggressive and she was yelling at me, even if I wasn't, I'm not there to defend myself. It's like if you have kids and one kid comes to you and says, well, he punched me. Okay, prove that he punched you. How can you ask people with weapons to prove that what they did, that they killed this person with good reason without any witnesses around? Like, how can you make that legal?
There would be an investigation.
But,
and
okay,
the system, the way it is right now,
Excuse
just
me,
let me
wait a minute.
finish and I will listen to you. Right now, we have stand your ground in your homes and your businesses.
Absolutely.
Okay? And we don't see any problems or any, I'm coming up with the wrong, because I haven't had sleep, I'm trying to come up with the right word. There's not an epidemic of increase, or you don't hear a lot of abuses where people try to use stand your ground in your home.
That's
In
because
regards
not
to
a lot of-
racial, there's no excuse, none. No one should be harmed based on color or discriminated based on color.
But they are.
But they are. Like, the reason that the stand your ground issue isn't an issue currently in homes is because it's Iowa, and the majority population is white. So
Well, not to mention, people don't come busting into your house as often as you run into other people in public.
Exactly.
In public places where you know, that's where it's an issue. That's why you can't.
I recognize that that is a small minority of people rushing into houses or incidents where people are using stand your ground. I am telling you, this is not a license to kill. There would be an investigation. It'd be left up to the county attorney and the prosecutor.
So tell me about how that investigation would go. They'd sit down with the person who shot me and ask him questions, or her, I guess, could be a
Like the
woman.
investigation would happen the way it is right now.
So the person.
Because there's not gonna be any last investigation in regards to what's going on now or after standing.
But there are no witnesses, and the only person who can say anything is the person who shot me. How can you guarantee that they're gonna tell the truth? How does that investigation go?
Right now, how can you guarantee anything that investigators look into? They have to investigate, and certainly then the county prosecutor or county attorney makes a determination if there should be charges filed.
But the burden of proof and stand your ground is significantly lowered, so that somebody can just say, well, she was threatening me, and then that's taken as the binding word. That's the ultimate decision making.
Can I just do one more question here about county attorneys? Our county attorney, I don't know if you're aware, came out against this bill. And you said you were going to check with the Urbandale.
I did check
And
with
what
the
happened there?
police chief. I'm not gonna repeat what he said, because I don't wanna get,
That's fine.
I don't have his permission to talk about that conversation.
Did somebody else, John?
I would say with respect to the county attorney and to back up what Brad's saying here, yeah, he was opposed to the bill. I don't want to speak for him here, but I've talked to him about this. Just because somebody says, hey, I was being threatened, that's not a get out of jail free card. The investigation will be as robust and as aggressive as any other investigation that they do. They have investigators that are employed by the county attorney, and they'll look into it as rigorously as they possibly can. So I think there's some, I'm not a great fan of the legislation either, but I think there's some feeling that, well, all I have to say is I stood my ground against an aggressor and I walk away from this free. That's not necessarily the case. Just because you can say that now, and in a lot of cases, and it doesn't always pass muster. And so I think there's still some safeguards to this.
Hope you're right, Bob.
Yeah, some dead kids in Florida who might disagree.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyone else? Comment? All yours.
First of all, thank you for being here. For two of you, it's really a great job to be here after being up all night.
Let's give him a round of applause for that.
I am concerned about the image of the state of Iowa and its ability to recruit companies and people from out of state. I'm from out of state, as you'll notice from my accent. Now, I noticed, and the question really is going to be for Bob Brunel, but others may want to come in. But my impression of this legislative session is that it is very negative to attracting people to Iowa. We have a Medicaid system that's not working. We have a stand your ground law that is putting minorities and particularly minority youth at risk. We have changes to collective bargaining, which is making teachers want to leave the state. We have restrictions on voting, which is going to particularly affect minorities and the elderly. We have cuts to university budgets, universities are a great way for economic development. We're cutting out public art from public buildings. We're eliminating the Leopold Center. The Leopold Center was a national treasure, but not liked by one group, Farm Bureau. We have attempts to eliminate the Des Moines Waterworks. We have the change in the minimum wage. It seems like our state legislature have been voting entirely along the lines of the NRA, ALEC, and the Farm Bureau. How does any of this help economic development in the state?
Great.
Well, I'll start. You know, many of the things that you talked about, I voted against. I voted against the voter suppression bill. Iowa does not have a voter identity problem here in the state. We are considered the second best state in the country when it comes to voter identity. We are spending $700,000, which we don't have, on a program to put together a program which we don't need. That money should have been spent, could have been spent on education, could have been spent on Medicaid, but we're spending it on that. We had the preemption of our minimum wage. We lowered the wages on 85,000 Iowans when that bill passed and the governor signed it. Polk County just had implemented their minimum wage, which was supposed to go into effect on April 1st. I think the governor signed the bill, what, a day or two before that?
Something like that.
So much for local control.
And so we're lowering the wages, or potentially lowering the wages on approximately 85,000 Iowans, which is going to have a negative impact on the whole state. We've done, I can't remember all the other things that you talked about. Yes, people are very concerned about the future of our state and the direction we're taking. And it's shown by the number of people that are showing up at the forums here. We normally would get this kind of a crowd normally, but in the last 2 or 3, we've gotten, what, 200-300 people. And it's having a negative impact. And it's going to have impact on our state for many, many years. And so, as a Democrat, I'm going to continue to fight to make sure we can restore a lot of these programs and things that were taken away this past year.
There's some things that we did do that was good this last year. This is all based on your interpretation. Obviously, you don't agree with a lot of things we did, and probably most of it one year doesn't. I will have to tell you, I was the Judiciary Chair, and we did get some good bills through in the last month or so. In particular, this last week, we did a sentencing reform bill. So with someone with the crack and cocaine and some of that stuff. I attempted to change the laws in regards to first-time possession of a smaller amount, I can't remember how many grams it was, of marijuana. Okay, because what's happened is we got some of these young kids that are making dumb decisions that and the same with the sentencing reform we did. It just tracks them forever, and then they can't get a job and lose scholarships and all that kind of stuff. I did attempt to, and I'm going to have an interim committee in regards to racial profiling. It kind of goes back to what you're saying. I've had some exposure, not personally myself, but our son played football at the University of Iowa, and really opened up my eyes in regards to him. Of course, a lot of his friends are of color, and they're scared to death when the police officer pulls them over. We're going to tackle that. We're going to have an interim committee. I did have a subcommittee on that, but it's just way too much. And so we really need to dig into that. I'm going to do the same thing on opioid abuses that are going on in the state of Iowa. We have another study on that. I do believe that I talked about that on the floor, that the medical cannabis could be an avenue to maybe have, no disrespect, but pharmacists, maybe doctors, prescribe less of the opioids. The schools, even though they're not happy that they got $40 million, they're the only segment of our government that we did not cut. They got $40 million, and I know it doesn't seem like a lot of money, But what we did do this last week, or last couple weeks, is we did give them local control home rule so they can have more flexibility in their schools. We also did a bill in regards to getting rid of some of this funding where we're telling them exactly where they have to spend that money. So I think there's some benefits on the local level for that. And so those are just a few things. The other thing is it doesn't really mean a lot to everyone here, but it does to me, and well, it probably does to everyone, is we did a Blue Lives Matter bill because of those 2 police officers who were shot, which increases the penalty if you kill a police officer. So there, and there's other things that I could go through here, but like I said, I think it's a matter of interpretation. I'm very proud of what we did this last year.
Is there a person of color on the racial committee?
This is legislators having people come in and testify on what's going on with the racial profiling.
There are
and
legislators
the NAACP,
that are of color.
Pardon me?
There are legislators that are of color in Iowa that you could bring
yeah,
into
and
the
I'm
committee.
not picking that. If anybody, this will be an interim committee that I haven't picked the House. Yeah, I'm gonna be House and Senate. I don't pick the House. I don't pick the Senate ones either. The leader will, but the NAACPs who came to me and I promised them this, and we will. It'll be not where we'll make recommendations for the next legislative session, but we're going to listen to whatever organization wants to talk to us to craft some legislation.
Yeah.
I promise you this: we will have an interim committee, and I promise you, I wouldn't have done the bill if I didn't want to move it forward. And Charles Schneider from West Des Moines is the one that he was co-chair of this committee, and I can't remember who the other person was. But to answer your questions, there will be an interim committee. It's a very complicated issue, and the intention is to craft legislation that we can run the next session.
My question was for actually Supervisor Brownell. So
Which one?
The question that I just asked about economic development and how the legislature seemed to have ignored that issue.
I would also throw.
As long as you remember the question, go ahead.
Workers' comp is another one they did this year that I thought was, not everybody may agree with this one, but it did advance some positive changes there too, so well done on that. Yeah, I think our biggest challenge here in Metro Des Moines, before and after the legislature, no matter what they did, has been workforce development. How do you get more people? We're the fastest growing metro metro in the Midwest. So how do you continue to get people that are going to come here and work here and all that? So it's a concern, that's for sure. But I'm going to tell you a story that kind of takes you to the logical conclusion of your question, which is an actual true story. It happened in Oklahoma City, and Oklahoma City was bidding for administrative offices for American Airlines. This is about 15 years ago. And big employer, going to come to Oklahoma City and going to have a ton of jobs, like 5,000, 6,000 jobs, all good paying jobs. So Oklahoma City put together a package, and it was just giving away the store. I mean, they gave away everything, and it was the best tax package they could possibly put together. And the decision day came, and American Airlines decided on Indianapolis, and Oklahoma City couldn't figure it out. So the mayor and the chamber people and the business leaders called American Airlines and said, what's going on here? We had the best tax package of anybody, which they did. And American wouldn't take their phone call and said, the decision's been made, we're moving on. But they continued to call them and said, we just want to know what we did wrong. And so American said, okay, come on up. And they went to their corporate offices, wherever those are, and Oklahoma City mayor and council members and other leaders, and they sat down with American Airlines, and American said this to them, and this is where we get to the conclusion of your question. They said, we sent administrative staff and senior management with their spouses to Oklahoma City for weeks at a time, just to stay there and be there. And when they all came back, they had this to say: they couldn't imagine any of them raising their families there. They couldn't imagine any of them wanting to be there. All there is to do is work and drink. And so now, to be fair to Oklahoma City, they turned the lights on and they looked in the mirror and they said, you know what, these guys may be right. And so they have done a marvelous renaissance in Oklahoma City. It's one of the best metros around right now. They've just done a great job. I know the mayor down there. He does a terrific job. And so it's a complete turnaround for Oklahoma City. But this is the kind of thing that happens. is that we want these really great corporations like Principal and Nationwide and Wells Fargo and these people to come in and provide these great jobs. And when senior management comes into Metro Des Moines, I can't speak for every metro in Iowa, but they come into Metro Des Moines, they see things that they like. You know, they see the art, they see the performances, they see the restaurants, they see all the things going on here, and it's terrific. So we are having good success in recruiting people of all kinds, a diverse population here in Metro Des Moines. Could that end? Yeah, could. So I don't know that we're on that path yet, but it's something that concerns us that, you know, we have to, there's people being lifted up, people being left behind. We need to make sure we're lifting everybody up.
Linda Smith, you got the next question. And behind, next question would be Kyle McCord, and that may be the last question. Go ahead.
Not just supposed to go to 12:30. I'm concerned about what I've been reading about Kim Reynolds, and I don't understand, first of all, why she can't move into Branstad's office, and she's going to somehow, with all the missing money, the cuts and so forth, to the disadvantaged. Why would they find $150,000 for her to move down the hall? Why can't it repeat history that she just be in the governor's chamber?
Well, good question. We put amendment on the standings bill this morning at 6:30 to try to take that off, the funding, and we couldn't get it off. And we said the same thing. Why does it cost $150,000 to move your office about 50 feet within the governor's office? And again, we wanted to use that money towards other programs that were cut, small programs that got cut through, like the Department of Human Services, Department of Public Health. Department of Public Health took a 12% reduction in their budget this coming fiscal year.
Right.
And it's going to have a major impact on healthcare services delivered throughout the state of Iowa. One of the things they do is they, if we have a crisis, a health crisis in the state of Iowa, like what happened in 2010 with the H1N1 flu epidemic, they coordinated all the programs throughout the whole state to get flu vaccine to counties so people in certain categories would get their vaccines first. If that would happen again in the state of Iowa today, we would be in the dire straits because we don't have the funding to be able to go out to all the counties and administer a program like that. So they took about a $6 million hit. That department took one of the largest hits in reduction in funding from the previous year.
What happens to the governor's office? I mean, that is like the Oval Office in the White House. What will happen to our governor's office when she takes over? It'll just sit vacant?
Well, they're gonna probably be another lieutenant governor will be probably chosen by Kim Reynolds. So that person then will move into her office, I'd assume.
But why is it costing
And I was told,
$180,000?
listen, and I had the same question, and I didn't dig on this particular thing, but I wanted to know what was going on. Evidently, with previous administrative changes, it's been around 100 to 150,000. I'm told that it's going to be for some more personnel to transition to her, and then of course the cost for all the stationery, and if you ever go into courthouses and there's pictures, they have to switch around all the pictures and all that.
There'll be new furniture purchased. There'll be probably
I'd rather have my money go
a
to
party.
the
There'll be some kind of a reception party that will be used with that money.
Really?
That's
Well,
I don't know about that, but anyway.
that's what we're told.
What happens to his staff?
Well, here's what I can tell you. I asked his chief of staff, Michael Muslow. I said, hey, you're going to be the chief of staff, and he told me he doesn't know. So I don't know if there are going to be changes in staff or what.
I heard he may be going to China with him too.
Yeah, I don't know.
Possibly.
I'm not going to China, in case you're wondering. Kyle McCord? That's me.
So this is for Senator Zahn and also for Representative Forbes. Talking about voter ID law, the one that is currently in the process. What will happen at the polls if there is a case where someone's signature doesn't match what is on their ID due to a disability or something else? Or if there is some sort of typo or mistake in the registration list? For example, your mother is 80 and a lifelong Republican, but due to a recent stroke is having trouble writing her name. What about an 18-year-old black man who is voting for the first time and is very nervous and doesn't sign his formal name because he isn't used to having to sign that way? Will they both be treated the same way? Will both of them be allowed or be disallowed their voting rights? I also might ask this in light of the fact that we have discussed in this forum quite a bit, the fact that we have all these budget cuts. Why is it we're needing to reinvest that money in more state-issued IDs rather than keeping the system that we already have?
Well, I'll start out first. On your question about the signature, okay, I've talked to some poll workers here in Urbandale that have been doing it for many, many years, and most poll workers are people over age 65 because they're usually retired. And I've talked to people that tell me they're not going to do it anymore because they don't want to have the onus on them to make the determination whether that person in front of them is there to legally vote. And in 99.99999, that person is there to legally vote. But now they're putting that responsibility on them to make that determination if that signature matches.
Right.
And if that's the case, and if they cannot make that determination, they'll still allow the person to vote, but it'll be a provisional ballot, which basically a provisional ballot doesn't really count. You vote, but it doesn't really count. My concern is that when people go to the polls, a majority of them are not going to know anything about this new law. It doesn't go into effect till 2019. So I mean, there is time to educate the public, but it's going to cost the Secretary of State. They're going to have to send out. I heard it's going to cost them about $1 million to send out all the mailings to tell people how the new system works. Which half the people probably won't even look at the mailing. But they're going to come to the poll, and they're going to find out, oh, I forgot my ID at home, I left, I don't have my license. And probably over 50% of the time, those people are not going to come back to the poll and vote. They're going to be so pissed off that they are going to just go home and say, I'll forget it, I'm not going to come back. Especially if the lines are going to be much, much longer when you go to vote in 2019. So just be prepared. When you go to the polls, it's probably going to take another 1.5 times to go through because they're going to have to be checking all these IDs. And I know we're probably not going to be appropriating more money for poll workers at the polls. And so a lot of people are just going to get very disgusted and just walk away.
Especially if you're an 80-year-old woman, right, who might not have been able to read the mailer, right, for one thing.
Exactly.
Or you get 70 mailers a day. Right?
Yeah. And like I said, we don't have a voter issue. We don't have it. It's just not proven. And that's
shorter hours.
Yeah, and then the other thing, the absentee ballots. They've reduced that from 40 days to 29 days now. So you have a shorter window to early vote.
And don't we have bigger problems? That's what I would say.
Couldn't we spend the money
Oh,
on something better?
yeah, well, like I said, we appropriated $700,000 for this new program to send out these voter ID cards to 85,000 Iowans who apparently don't have a federally or state issued ID card. And the funny thing is, they aren't going to have their picture on them.
Right, yeah.
which is kind of asinine. They aren't going to have their picture on them. Now, most everybody in this room probably has a driver's license which has a picture, so you're not a problem. But it's the low-income, disabled people that don't have a state-issued ID is where the Secretary of State has the list. Apparently, they're going to send these cards out to people, and then they're going to come in to vote. But again, no picture ID on the cards. So,
Senator Zong, can you explain how this would be good for the state of Iowa?
First of all, I did support that bill because I think, as you do with so many other transactions and things you do in your daily life, you show an ID. And I think it's good to show an ID when you vote because I think it's really important. And I know that this bill it's not, there's a reason why it's 2019 because they've got to do some things here that probably are going to have to be corrected. But philosophically, I think you should show government-issued ID to vote.
And you're willing to put $700,000 into that rather than mental health?
At least.
I did vote for that, and to get it started, so.
That's a priority question. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so mine will be.
This is the last question.
Yep.
and then we'll wind up.
Mine will be shorter.
Good.
So, what are the exact forms of ID that will be allowed under the law? Because it hasn't been clear. I've looked out there and I've been trying to find it. Since legislators have repeatedly stressed that voter ID law won't suppress or discourage voters from participating in elections, how is the state going to make sure all legally eligible voters have an appropriate ID to vote? Now, I know you said that the Secretary of State has a little line, has a little thing out that he's gonna send all these out. People throw away tons of mail. How are we gonna make sure that these people actually have the ID and that they're not going, oh crap, I didn't get it, or I moved it so it didn't come to me, or I tossed it into the waste bin accidentally? And then they won't have any recourse. They'll be standing there to do the vote, and they'll be going, oh, you didn't get it? Then you're just out of luck, as with the provisional ballot. So that is a huge concern for me. And that's for Mr. Zahn. I want to know 5 forms of ID that you would like to have available.
It's state, federal, any kind of state or federal ID is what is acceptable. And I don't have the bill in front of me. Passport. Obviously, that's a federal ID, so. Yeah.
Yeah, state or federal, again, really super big. What were you going to say, Representative?
Well, I was just gonna say that, you know, I've got statistics here. There were 4 cases of voter fraud across the whole country in 2016, and this is from the Washington Post in the December report, and it said 3 out of the 4 were Republicans that committed.
Including that Des Moines lady who voted for Trump
Now, I'm just
twice.
stating what it says here. I don't know if it's true or not, but that's what the Washington Post reported.
Sounds pretty expensive for 4 people.
It says one mailing to all registered voters in Iowa is estimated to cost $1 million.
At least.
And we'll have to do that to educate the public on the new program.
Oh, you'll have
And
to do more
there'll
than
be
that.
some challenges, I think, to this. There'll be legal challenges at some point, which is gonna cost money. So.
Does a state university ID work?
No.
No, it won't work.
No, it's not a
State
state.
ID, right?
Why not a voter registration card? Why would I have that if I can't vote with it? Why are we spending money to send those?
My other point, and I just want to put this out here, is I used to live in Wisconsin. I lived in Wisconsin when it became Walker-Wisconsin. And the mess over there that he has made is unbelievable. I lived in Milwaukee. I found out the last time that they had the election, that a ton of people were not allowed to vote because they had been realigning the registration records and cut a bunch of people out who don't have same-day registration. People who have voted for years, went up to the polls to vote, and were told, oh, your name's not on the voter rolls anymore. Oh, we accidentally deleted your name. Interestingly enough, most of them were Republican, or were Democrats and independents. So, you know, there is a huge problem with this whole shenanigans with the voter ID. It does not solve a problem, it makes a problem, and I want you to know that.
We were told that there were 2 minutes. Now, I'm a little bit disappointed. I don't have any signs, I don't have any pins. I brought my family the last several times and we couldn't even get in the door because there were people outside of Urbandale. A lot of you know me, that clear when you were at the other building I used to come, and now we don't even have, I want to talk to my representatives. I'm not a fresh person or whatever and came with an agenda or part of any organization. And you told us each one was going to have 2 minutes, and I gave my card and I've kept my mouth shut, and I'm a little upset. Thank you.
I'll take responsibility for the 2 minutes. Anyway, you want to do a wind up?
Why don't you let him ask a question?
Yeah, you got a question?
Yeah.
Yes, I did. I had 2 questions. Well, first of all, as I had said, I've been, a lot of you folks know me. I've been coming to these chamber meetings for quite a few years. The last couple of times I brought my family and some of my neighbors because we knew how busy, I'm talking to the state folks, how busy you are. during the legislative session. Unfortunately, my wife and daughter-in-laws and those folks aren't here today. There was talk about senators on. I support you, and I'm one of the thousands of people that are in your district that are pro-life. And I don't make any mistake. I don't make any apologies for it. As far as the pseudoscience, it can be a different blood type, different sex that the woman is, that's carrying in her body. But I don't want to get into that. I want to tell you that I am part of the thousands of people that live in your districts and yours, Mr. Forbes. And I just want to make that known. I don't want to sit there and say who makes the biggest amount of noise in one of these things are the ones that hold the majority, because that isn't necessarily so. Okay, and that's with that. The second thing is that on this texting law, I'm a little bit, I don't text when I drive. I know people have gotten accidents, they were, but I do use my GPS. I'm a little bit worried about holding my phone while I'm driving. Can you expand on that? And thank you for letting me have this question.
I serve as ranking member on the Transportation Committee in the House. And so I put forward a hands-free bill this past session. And we got it out of the committee. It came out of the full committee on a fairly large vote. I think it was like maybe 14-6. And unfortunately, the bill never saw the light of day after that. It goes into the leadership's hands, and the chairman of the committee is a Republican and a good friend of mine, and I know he worked hard with the Speaker of the House and the Majority Leader, and we could not get it up on the floor for a vote. We did pass a bill that would ban texting and make it a primary offense, but it just doesn't work. Law enforcement says it's unenforceable. And so we did pass that, which now if you get caught, the police officers can pull you over and maybe give you a ticket. Now, the problem with that is, when we're talking about minorities here, that gives police, in some cases, an opportunity to pull a car over, and sometimes it tends to maybe lean more towards somebody that's of color driving a car. So we asked for a minority impact statement on this bill. We asked for that on many bills. So we make sure that people know when we pass legislation like this, what is the impact on minorities? And so it makes people aware before they make their final vote that it does sometimes have a negative impact on the minorities here in our state and country.
And it's a bill that, there's actually two bills that are out there. One was run through judiciary, which I was a part of, and that was to increase the penalties if you are texting and you kill someone while you're driving. That did pass. I assume it passed the House. Probably sent down the governor.
That one did.
The other one was a texting bill. I voted against it just because, first of all, texting while you're driving is one of the most dangerous things you could do. But it was not, it just isn't enforceable, and that's what the police were telling me. Plus, the libertarian streak in me is just like, no, I don't want to give them another reason. Secondly, I'm sick and tired of all these bills to try to protect you for not using your common sense. And so, how many more laws do we need to pass? Just something you should know that you shouldn't be doing. But I do know it's an epidemic. We did pass a texting bill several years ago for younger people, but the police told us it's going to be very hard to enforce.
Let's do a wind up.
Yeah, and I just would say thank you very much for being here, coming to all these forums. It's great to be back in the Urbandale Chamber. I have some good news for all of you. We're done. Okay, so you get a break from us for several months. I know a lot of you will like that. But we go back to our real jobs. And I appreciate you coming here. I can say right now, because we had that all-nighter, I am 100% caught up on my emails, and I think I have one phone call left, and I got thousands of them. Yeah. So anyway, thank you. It's an honor to serve Urbandale, Johnson and Grimes, and I appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Brad.
I do like it. It's an honor and pleasure to serve the city of Urbandale. I'm in my 5th year in the House. Brad's been there at least double that time, I think, up at 12. And Brad and I work together very well. Many issues we don't see eye to eye on, but we're still friends. And we talk just about every day. I'm either at his desk or he's at my desk. He was at my desk this morning at 3 a.m. We were talking about some things on cannabis. But we try to work to make Iowa better. And that's the main focus, what we try to do. And we all have the same focus of doing it. Now, we get there different ways, but we all want to make this a better state. And I'll pledge to you, I'll continue to try to make sure that Iowans are treated fairly in the Iowa legislature. So thank you very much. Over the interim, if you have any questions, feel free to email me. You can stop into my pharmacy. I have a pharmacy on Douglas at 83rd and Douglas. I'm always available to talk there too if you'd like to see me in person.
And I would suggest that you're probably not going to get any response from any emails this afternoon.
Yeah, you're right. We're going to go home and go to bed.
Congratulations to Brad and John for the great work they do, and also for being here after being up all night. Although, let's not forget, John has access to drugs that can keep him awake and alert, so maybe not subscribe to him. But it's an honor to serve. I echo what's been said here. It's an honor to serve Urbandale in the district I have. It's a great district. If anyone wants to contact me at any time, I'm around. Please don't hesitate, and I'll do whatever I can to help you. Thank you.
Again, thanks for being here in these sessions. It's one thing I want to note, on a happy note, that is Urbandale officially turned 100 last Sunday. So the official incorporation date was April 16, 1917, and it occurred on Easter Sunday. So we did. There was not really the opportunity to celebrate on that day, but the big events are going to happen right around the 4th of July. So, but we are officially 100 years old now. So I want to thank EJ for serving as a co-chair on that committee. He's done a great job planning everything for that. So. We have a lot of good things to look forward to. We've been here for 100 years. We're looking forward to our next 100 years. And what's nice about these forums is that we can talk about the issues that are important. We have a lot of things to work on to make sure that Urbandale is a great community and it's going to be here 100 years from now. So thanks for being here. It's my honor and pleasure to serve as your mayor, and look forward to seeing you. And please contact me anytime if you have any questions outside of these forums.
For me, education is probably the key to all of this. It doesn't matter whether it's gun control, road taxes. If you're not educated, you're not getting anywhere. So it all starts with education. So, and that's from the early age, understanding what government is and not. And so I encourage you all to be strongly advocate for public education and support. Otherwise, just thank you.
Thank you. As chairman, as moderator, I want to thank everybody for the participation this year. I think we had some tense moments, but I think by and large we all can be proud, because I think the bottom line was, I think we all behaved and acted very professionally and appropriately. So even though, again, there might have been a moment or two, thank you very much for all of that. That's very important. I also want to thank the legislators and the office holders that are here. You got an opportunity because, as I've said before, not everybody is willing to take Saturday and go through what these people have gone through the last few months. So thanks to them. Thanks to the Chamber for sponsoring it. And I would also put in a plug. Go to the website, the Urbandale 100, because we're going to have a lot to do toward the end of the last week of June and the first week of July. And please participate, because we've got a lot to be proud of in Urbandale. And even though the mayor would tell you otherwise, I'm not 100 years old. Thank you very much, and have a great weekend.